So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council, joined here today with Jonathan Kirchling, who's all things media, and for the Tech Council. So we're pretty excited about that. We are hopefully having everyone's phones muted. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback, so I'm not exactly sure what's happening. But our intent is to mute everyone's phone to ignore the background noise. So I will have our team on the back end make sure that that's happening. So I want to give a couple of shout outs. We've been doing this show for about 90 some odd days, and we're pretty excited about the kind of exchange that we've had, but our job is to make sure that we're providing relevance to everything that's going on in the tech world and our greater community. So we have partners, and the partners are, like Huntington Bank, have been with us right from the beginning, but we also have Sheets. And if you don't know Sheets, which you really should, if you're a Pittsburgher and you've traveled anywhere, you know that they have a mission to provide fast, friendly service, quality products, clean environment, and they're known across the industry as a company that constantly reinvents themselves. And by the way, they have an innovation center now in Pittsburgh, and they're working on that next iteration of innovation. So we're pretty excited to have them as partners. Deloitte is a partner of ours for many, many years. They're a force in business from an innovation perspective. They have been at the forefront in many revolutions in business for over 175 years. So I thank both of them for their sponsorship, as well as Huntington Bank for being an anchor for so long. So a couple of things on programming notes. We have some great sessions coming up for our business as usual, just at noon, including an information session this Friday about the Keystone Innovation Zones. We'll be hosting the lead official from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development that administers what is called the KIZ program. And our friends at KIZ Resources will also be with us, and they'll talk about the $100,000 in tax credits that are available through KIZ companies each year, talk about the process of selling credits, et cetera, all the things that matter to helping your business, particularly in the early stages. On August 12th and 13th, we're kicking off Tech Fest 2020. It's a 2-day program aimed at helping software developers hone their skills through multiple workshops, and they're hosted by peers. And believe it or not, on August 24th, we're hosting our annual Technology Leadership Golf Outing with honorary hosts this year, including Ed McAllister, the CIO of UPMC, Richard Smith, the CIO of Wabtec, and Jim Wenner, the CIO of Sheets to start. We have a few more in the hopper for that. So I mentioned that we've muted your microphones. I think we have that under control now. And then we also have a chat. And the chat is allowed for you to ask our guest questions. So please use that. It is not intended for sales and any kind of advertising for your company. So I'm going to jump in, and I am going to introduce Jason Vallozzi. He's the founder of Campus to Careers Crossroads, And here's the thing. We're living in a world where everything's changing. And if anyone has any kids or family members or friends who have kids that are in high school and as well in college, Jason really has a great pulse in terms of what's happening right now. There are lots of concerns, lots of issues, lots of concerns, lots of things that people are thinking about financially as well as academically in terms of what's happening with their kids. So we're going to bring on Jason, and he's going to just talk about himself for a moment and his business and what he's doing. So Jason, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. Really excited. So as you mentioned, I have a business called Campus to Career Crossroads. I help families one-on-one with the college admissions process. Sometimes people in Pittsburgh aren't aware of independent educational consultants. We aren't here to rival school counselors, but we work with families one-on-one that have a multitude of questions from the parent side, the student side, helping them find college success. And right now, many families have been reaching out more than ever to my business because having an advocate on your side during the admissions process is more crucial than ever. So I spent over 15 years in admissions, so I've seen thousands of families go through this process. I know their stresses and concerns. And then also I'm a part of best-in-class professional associations, which continues my knowledge and gives me colleagues throughout the country. One of those is the Independent Educational Consultants Association, where I'm actually not a member, but involved in their leadership structure regionally. as well as their finance committee. So these avenues give me a lot of great resources, knowledge, insights. I've been talking to admissions officials on and off the record, let's say, for the past couple months. And things have really gotten interesting as they've always wanted students to come back to campus, but COVID is spiking in many parts of our country and just not practical. So it's really great to be here today. I really love the thoughts we have for today, just helping families right now. There's many senior freshmen that are transitioning, and how do they do it? There's whole new stressors. And then for high school students and families, how do we apply to colleges? What are we doing there? So a lot of great thoughts.
So where do you want to start? Where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about what the top concerns are as it relates to going back to campus, both college and high school? Like, what are some of the patterns? Do you want to talk? Because I'd also like to talk about some advice as well.
Sure.
So you want to set the stage for talking about going back to campus, because each university seems to have a different plan.
They do.
And, you know, if you could give some guidance, that would really be helpful. So if you want to start with college or you want to start with high school?
No, let's start with college. I think that's
okay.
The immediate right now, because these next few weeks, we've seen even in our region, speaking of that, colleges in the state system have recently pulled back. They were going to open, and
right.
A great article in the Post-Gazette today talking about the changing landscapes. And I had this fear from being in admissions. Colleges are risk adverse for the most part. So opening up, bringing thousands of students back into dorms and cafeterias.
Right.
It was a very challenging thought for me. So it's getting real, I think. Many families don't realize how quickly the summer goes.
Right.
Many schools have just recently had graduation ceremonies of some remote capacity drive.
Right.
So people are still in that, celebration mode, but they can be literally, I was speaking to a client yesterday that's going to an out-of-state school, and August 11th is when they're going. That's not that far away and ready to go. But for other families, that as schools start earlier, tuition bills come, these logistics. So I think a couple great things that families need to do, especially right now they're transitioning, is talk about this as a family. Do students learn well remotely? Are they in contact? One thing that I take a lot of pride in all my clients, we have admissions contacts at each of the universities they're going to be matriculating to. And we're talking because those people know it best. I mean, we watch the news and it gets very confusing, even from my experience. You hear University of California, what's going on in Texas, Florida.
Right.
But how does that impact a student going to a school in New York or where they might be attending? So I think it's one of the most underrated areas, Audrey, that people don't utilize in admissions. I stress with all my clients is build relations with admissions people. It's never too late. And they know what's going on directly at their school. Changes are happening every day. But I think families need to be talking amongst themselves. Are they comfortable with school in an online setting, a hybrid setting, whatever that campus is proposing? And are they talking to those admissions officials, understanding what the logistics are, what the contingent plans are, and making sure that meets well with everybody in the family?
Jason, there was an awesome Wall Street Journal article this morning that just basically echoes what you're saying right now. And it's a mess and it's different for everybody. And so I think your advice is just so sound, like build that relationship with your admissions officer. And that is your direct way in, right?
Yeah, and that's one area. It's funny, Jonathan, it's a great point. People really think of admissions officers as gatekeepers or transactional and never think to reach out. I know from being on that side of the table, I love, and I still talk to admissions people every day. They want to get to know students. They want to get to know families. But if you don't reach out, you don't start that dialogue of, hey, what do the plans look like? What are contingent plans? What happens if students get sick on campus? Some colleges are designated dorms, specifically in case students get COVID. So there's all types of things out there. And the only way you can do that is really be talking and dialoguing with admissions officials, university officials at the campus that you're directly interested in. And those are not out of bounds questions. Those are questions that need to be asked.
So but in many cases, when you mentioned earlier that it's only a few weeks away for many of these decisions to be made. Right. So let's say I'm, headed to some school in New Jersey and you're my advisor to
Right.
myself and my family. What kinds of things are you going to coach me through to think about?
Well, I would say at this point, most of my families, we've had conversations. I've been fortunate. My clients lead towards planners. So we've been talking the past couple months. I've been kind of seeing some of these things. So we've been talking about, are you comfortable with online learning if that happens? Are you comfortable with a hybrid model? So I've been trying to have these honest conversations with families that I could potentially see again, no one has a perfect crystal ball, but some students we've seen this past few months as school ended did better with Zoom learning. They were distracted in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some clients and some students I've seen that didn't do well in a Zoom learning environment. So how does that, you know, one other piece of advice I've been talking with my clients over the past couple months, look at your freshman class schedule. If this goes online, are you able to do this? I jokingly say, which is not probably a joke, but true, I shouldn't be taking chem or biology via Zoom. So I probably shouldn't have that on. Jonathan can appreciate that maybe as a communication.
You would do just fine doing your biology classes on Zoom, Jason.
There'd be a lot of studying, and I need all the in-person help I can get for that class, I'd be honest to say. But no, I think it's looking at your class schedule. It's easy to schedule classes for students. In a sense, they'd be all in person. But what happens if there's a change? Even we don't know what's going to happen when we do get back to campus, if there's a flare up or what happens. So I think it's those type of thoughts, Audrey, of talking through the scenarios, encouraging families to talk amongst themselves once a week, making sure they're all comfortable. Because there's a big family transition a lot of people don't realize. When students go to school, mom, dad, the student, they're all impacted. So are we all comfortable with this? And then secondly, looking at your schedule is huge. And are you taking the right classes to set your freshman year up for success?
Well, you know, what's really interesting is that, you know, it could be that this, you know, this whole issue of COVID that's happened has just changed learning forever. I mean, and it could be that the examples that you're using in the past are just the past. That's all. They're just a memory. And many kids are kinesthetic learners. They're hands-on. They really like the interaction. That's how they learn and they sense. So could it be that this is just the beginning of the disruption of the future?
It is. And I think one thing that I've shared with clients, you know, going across all different majors is this creates a whole new opportunity out of this. You know, we've seen our work world working remotely in some cases has made us more efficient. It's changed industries. So I think it's given these clients a springboard to go into their college education, to solve new problems, to think of new solutions in a different direction, and how all majors are going to be impacted. They're going to be studying to embrace that opportunity, to find these solutions, to look at the areas they're going to be studying and see where they can be the inventors, where they can be the innovators, where they can add value to all companies that are going through this. Because to your point, Audrey, I do think there is a major underlying to this, but I think we'll find some positivity. And again, if students I find from working with them over the years, they're highly adaptable in most cases. And I think they'll adapt well with this. But I think if they start to figure out where the opportunities are and when they can connect their learning, something I'm very passionate about is not just going from class, but connecting their learning to industry. That's when they can really take off with the opportunities ahead as we get more settled in this new stage.
I mean, there is one piece of university life when you're a resident and when you get a chance to live in a dorm and you get a chance to adapt and adjust to meeting a whole lot of new people. And to me, that's the biggest fear, that we're going to have a generation of people who didn't have that kind of opportunity. Now, listen, college isn't for everyone, and I understand that. Right. But if you're going to spend the money on college, that to me is the biggest perk, is having those incidental, accidental, you know, intentional relationships with an array of people that you normally wouldn't. And if you don't have collaboration in the classroom, how do you do that, right? What are some of those you know, accidental collisions of friendships?
No, I think you make a great point, because I think parents are struggling with that as they're probably going to get tuition bills ahead. Right. What students originally applied for 6 and 8 months ago is not what is sort of the deal right now. But we're at where we're at. Students in many cases will be living in dorm rooms by themselves. So I think you make a great point. That's something that concerns me from my admissions leadership days. One of the biggest things, and I always stress to clients, is being involved in clubs and organizations and activities. And that's going to look and feel differently. Freshmen that were isolated in their dorm room generally didn't transition well to that campus. And in many cases, sometimes would leave because they never found the fit.
Right.
Or they'll be exclusively in dorm rooms by themselves. So there is sort of a new social dynamic to be worked out. But I also think in this new reality we're living in, just like we're speaking today, we all have to learn how to communicate, work virtually online together. So I think, again, hopefully some of their adaptability will come into play.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, the college experience they applied for in November, October, December, January, that experience is no longer an option for them. So.
Well, I mean, part of, if you think about, if you just take an old model of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I mean, it's safety, right? You know, shelter, obviously safety, but then what about the sense of belonging, right? Sure. And if you're in your own room, I mean, I can't imagine what it would have been like if I had my own room when I first went to Ohio State. Honestly, I can't imagine, and I'm an extrovert. So for those, you know, I wanted to be a part, and having a roommate, whether I like them or not, was a key part of my transition into feeling belonging in the community.
Yeah. No, I think the nostalgia college experience that many parents wanted to see
right.
them have this year just isn't.
And it could be the nostalgia is yesterday's news. So we're just in a new world. That's my point. You know, I'm being nostalgic, but that's not the world of today. And I get that. And so moving forward, are you seeing more students take a year off? Has that become more prevalent?
You know, ironically, my clients are planners, and we've been talking. Many had decisions before decision day hit, which is traditionally April and May. So we knew where they wanted to go. I think students out of all this still want to get to campus, at least the majority of clients I'm working with. I haven't had that. Not to say it might not happen in the weeks ahead, but I think students still want that chance of, hey, I want to get to campus, even if it's a hybrid model. Even if I'm living in my own dorm, they still want to have that college experience. They don't know any different, so they're still looking to get there. I do think the word, I'm glad you brought up, it's something I'm super passionate about. Gap year and a student deferring their admission are two different worlds, and it really scares me for my admissions times. When students took a year off school, there were many students that never came back.
Mm-hmm.
I think a student that takes a year off without any plan, and I can respect if they aren't an online learner and this wouldn't be a good financial investment, I can respect that. But I would want to know, and I don't have this with any clients, but I'm prepared. What are we doing with the 8-hour, the 16 hours in the day? What are we learning? What are we structured? How are we getting back to school? Because students without those plans, unfortunately, college or any type of education post-secondary will pass them by quickly, and then it may come back when they have a lot more life responsibilities. I think gap year I hear a lot, which I wrote a great blog with a person that runs a gap year program on my website. It differentiates. Those two terms mean something different. And again, coming back to our point, it's so situational. You need to speak at colleges. I know there's certain universities, it's their prerogative. I don't think it's right or wrong. I'm not here to judge, but they're taking merit aid away if you defer for the whole year. So if you defer, you need to understand if you've gotten some sort of institutional award or aid, what will happen to that? So again, you need to be having the dialogue with the admissions people. Some will let you hold it, some won't. Again, there's over 4,000 colleges in the country, so you really need to be in the details to you. So it's, again, I think if somebody is going to defer, I really would want them to have a strong action plan of what they're going to do and how they're going to come back to this, whether it's in January or the following year.
Jason, I posted the link to that blog post. It's a really good post. It's in the comments there. So if anyone's out there, check that out because it does really explain it very nicely.
So what about SATs now? What about this whole movement about entrance exams changing? I think in California, they've made some changes, and I'm not sure about anywhere else.
No, it's the University of California systems decided to start piloting test optional. With that in mind, many schools are saying they are test optional, and I think this comes again to our point where you really have to be in the details. And if families don't know, this is where I become a great resource because I love to get in the details. Some colleges are saying they're test optional, but they were requiring scores for business programs, engineering programs, medical programs. So you really have to look, is a school test optional or not? And I think what families are saying, and they're losing sight of, there's something in admissions called test blind and test optional, not to be confusing. Test blind is when a college will not look at scores altogether. Test optional is when a college will say, if you have scores, we'll consider them. However, if you don't, we'll look at other areas. So what you have to realize is there are, and I do have clients that, have taken these tests in the past in December, so they do have great scores, so they can submit those. So I would say to that, at this time, the SAT and the ACT are, have their full fall schedules out. If you haven't registered, you need to get dates because colleges haven't moved their admissions dates back and their deadlines, which a big deadline is usually around November 1st for many colleges. So it's important to get those scores. Now, if we aren't able to test in the fall, then that could change things, for some. But I think right now, fingers crossed, everyone's hoping that we can get back to standardized testing in the fall months and students would be able to submit those scores. So I think people need to be very cautious when they hear test optional and not think, woohoo, we're done with that. So
I know.
It's coming back, man. It's coming back. No worries.
What about the questions about value proposition? So I get into Harvard versus, going to another university.
Sure.
Maybe I don't need to spend $60,000.
Yeah.
Are you hearing these?
Yeah, no, I think, it's funny. I was on a call with a client this morning. There is an admissions application method called early decision, which is a binding commitment to a school. And the student said, which is a great point. He's like, Jason, I really like this school, but I don't see it. It's really tough for making an early decision commitment, which is a great point because early decision isn't for everyone. I always feel many competitive schools like Harvard and Ivy's run strongly on more applicants being admitted through early decision in many cases. So I think that's going to be a big challenge for students. And I think to your point as well, Audrey, families are going to say from a value standpoint, if we're learning at home, that education cost could be completely different for colleges who are pushing $70,000, $80,000 a year.
Right. So it could change this next generation. We had a generation that got out of school and they have degrees and they're deeply in debt, and not able to get jobs. So that's also prevalent. So are you aligning people to be thinking about what the opportunities are in the next 4 to 5 years?
Absolutely. That's a passion and why I've always called my business Campus Career Crossroads. I think college should be thought of in a healthy way with a return on investment perspective. Every career has a different ROI and it's healthy. I think I take a lot of pride in building a college list for families and navigating blind spots. Again, we shouldn't have a college list with all $70,000, $80,000 price points. There's all different price points throughout that. So you have to protect a family academically and financially. So I think when you build an effective college list, you have different ways to apply. You have different schools of admission selectivity. And those choices are really helpful because when they're in the right space, it's really fun to watch these young people then connect the dots, find their passion, find their interest over the months ahead, and they have great choices. So it's more critical than ever, I think, to build the right college list for clients and their families to make sure we stay in that affordability, academic, and return on investment range. It's going to set them up for success.
So are there any questions out there, Jonathan?
Got some great ones here. Yeah, definitely. Jason, are you expecting a big decline in overseas students and how this might impact college finances?
I'm sorry, what was the first part of that, Jonathan?
Are you expecting a big decline in overseas students due to the whole COVID thing? And will that impact college finances then accordingly?
Yeah, actually, that's huge. Not to get political, a few weeks ago, the Trump administration wanted to stop foreign students from coming on. A lot of universities filed lawsuits, because again, foreign students are students who usually pay full tuition, and universities have been very hurt right now with finances the past 4 months. So, I think that's something else people need to look at. But having foreign students come in adds a great deal of diversity to the campus life, the learning, and that's something very important that colleges need, and looks like it's going to happen potentially, but is something, it's another area of concern for college administration leadership right now, making sure all those students are back on campus safely.
Absolutely. We've got a really good comment here from one of our regular webcast viewers here from Aaron O'Neill, just commenting here saying, overwhelmingly students physically went to school to connect with high achiever fellow students and teachers and in-person opportunities. She says, went back to school for a master's recently, and the school asked those current students what they thought about online learning. Well, there are benefits to it, being able to replay presentations in safety, but you're not getting that connection, obviously, that we've been talking about this entire time, because you know how important it is for us to be together when we can.
Yeah, no, it's going to be different in that regard. mean, again, I'm not a doctor, I have a vaccine, but I'd like to think somewhat in the months or year ahead or so, that there will be some of that back to normalcy. All students have gone through this. It was interesting. I was reading an article, and there's a podcast from Tulane University who has a really great admissions leader, who's really a thought leader throughout the country, and shared students coming from Hurricane Katrina and how that impacted their college experience back many years ago.
Wow.
Now that adversity, coming into a place like Tulane, which is a very prestigious university, very academically challenged, they were set to go there. They had obviously a lot of momentum taken out of their freshman experience, but how they worked through that, rebounded, came through stronger. So I know this freshman class is certainly having a lot of consternation. I certainly have a lot of empathy for, but I do think that they will get back to some of that nostalgia college experience at some point. It's going to look different, but I think this will embolden them. And again, if they can take these opportunities to find new solutions, new ways to collaborate, they're going to be stronger and further ahead because of it.
So one of the things that I worry about is the bifurcation of access to universities. And I worry that this has made it worse, because only those who can have access can afford to even make some of these decisions. And I also worry that many universities might not be able to withstand the challenges ahead. And so some may say that's just the free market working appropriately, right?
Right.
I do think that we might be all too nostalgic because we had great university experiences, and we want that for, our kids and our families and friends. I do think that there's no going back, but I also think that we need the advice of someone like you who's been across the sector for so long, on both sides of it, so to speak, that can just help people think about what's the return, what's the investment, how does your child learn, what kind of careers is your child or your family member going to go into, and what is the world? What's the world? And we don't know what the world is in 4 years from now, because jobs that will be existing in 4 years are not jobs that we know about today. But we directionally know that there are some basic skills that people really do need to have, at least as a base in college, and it's continuous learning. So I appreciate the work that you're doing by helping families. And so obviously you're doing a whole bunch of Zooms, right? You're talking to families by Zooms. You're not going to their house. You're not hanging out with them, right?
No, it's, I think it's too risky for everybody. I just wouldn't want to see anybody get sick, from their family to my family. And really, I've done this with clients all throughout the country and had great success. And I think it's actually more advantageous in some ways to meet via Zoom. Family schedules were always busy, sharing screens. And even when we talk through details, and even right now, I've been working with a lot of students on building their college application items, because there's still a lot of controllables to develop a great college application that students can do right now. Sharing a screen, talking through essays, talking through activities, talking through all the details is actually much more effective. And many families have liked it. They found even more value because it's more convenient for their schedules and work schedules, and we don't commute. So again, it's probably added an extra layer of efficiency to my business, where again, I always enjoyed the face-to-face with people, and I think our great Pittsburgh community always values that. But I think right now, safety first, and we aren't compromising anything in the service that's being delivered. And it's probably more effective instead of passing papers and passing things around and taking any chances.
That's great. Well, Jonathan, if there's nothing else.
One last question, just snuck in under the bell here. Yeah, from Alicia McGinnis. So here's a good one for you, Jason. Curious about your thoughts on this. What are your thoughts about standardized testing going forward? How will it be relevant if some applicants had problems getting it done with COVID, plus some schools are just abandoning it at this point?
No, it is being piloted to, when we look at the UC system and other schools, people are looking to maybe step away from it. It's going to be interesting. I know colleges, in many cases, it was a great data point for them to help find that academic fit. So I think it's going to be determined through this, probably out of this, how colleges can evaluate candidates appropriately and effectively to fit. The one thing that I always say with standardized test scores, people don't think of as much, is that they actually help, I think, when you look at the scores a little bit, to see what that academic fit would be for the student there, because you don't want to see a student get over overextended academically. So test scores, people always looked at, what do I need to get in? But then secondly, you can look at them from a different light to help determine academic fit.
Right.
A lot of people never thought
Interesting.
Good point.
Good stuff.
But yeah, I think it's something out there. It's going to be tough to potentially abandon. The ACT and the SAT certainly are huge companies that have a lot of presence, and you know, there's just been a lot of influence with that. But I also think colleges are open-minded to it, so it's probably going to be one of the things we definitely have to track, and it could be a new possibility of the COVID in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years when we look at. There is a great website, I'll leave it in closing, called fairtest.org. A lot of families don't realize it exists out there, that tracks all the colleges going test optional. And even before this, there were many colleges that were truly test optional, meaning they didn't want to see your score,
Right.
things like that. So many people don't realize that website's out there because sometimes they might have a son or daughter that's not, you know, best for standardized testing. Fairtest.org was another great resource I love to share with clients because it showed them there's tons of great possibilities out there. You know, if standardized testing isn't a great fit for someone as well.
Well, thank you for joining us. I think your website should have been shared by now. You want to say it one last time?
Sure, it's campus-to-career-crossroads.com, just as it sounds, completely spelled out. I really appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully, we've maybe shared some insights of
Very good.
the officials and anything I
Definitely.
can help out over and above. Happy to help everybody.
Definitely.
great stuff,
Thank
Jason.
you so
Appreciate
much. So, Jonathan, who's on tomorrow?
Tomorrow is Luke Skirman from niche.com. Very excited, man. That was a $35 million Series C raise back in spring. One of the positive points in Pittsburgh during this whole COVID thing. So we're going to learn about how they're going to grow in Pittsburgh, Audrey. Good
Right,
stuff.
but they're focused on colleges and
college, yeah, finding colleges and schools and neighborhoods. So good stuff.
So thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.